That's right, girls. Being overly sexual and being strong are the same thing. It's the same thing. It's the same thing.
We've all seen those movies that especially dominated the 2000s. An awkward, cute if you look at her in the right light, socially ostracized girl goes through a magical transformation where she changes her appearance and suddenly becomes the object of men's desires. This sort of makeover that mostly consists of brushing the girl's hair and giving her contacts is supposed to represent a young woman coming into herself and becoming empowered, a sexual liberation. Considering the circumstances that predated this, it makes sense why women depicted as taking agency over their own sexuality is seen as empowering and transgressive. Female sexuality was pretty much non existent in popular media for a very long time. Even in the media that portrayed married couples, they would oftentimes show them sleeping in separate beds. So it makes sense that under those conditions, women embracing sex and sexuality can be seen as very transgressive to the patriarchal structure. But are depictions of aggressive female sexuality actually empowering and representative of a reclamation of power? The crux of the argument seems to boil down to the very firm held belief that by a woman choosing to sexualize herself, she has transgressed the social norms enough in a way that is revolutionary. When women choose to show more skin, be intentionally provocative, and sexually liberal, they are showing that they do not care what men think about them and will not be controlled or shy away from their sexuality. The issue is that while this is oftentimes depicted as being aspirational, the women oftentimes play into the sexual expectation of men. They cater to men's fantasies while still claiming to be transgressive of male desire. The message through the media has been that women who feel free to explore and embrace their sexuality will experience a kind of unabashed empowerment.
Album is about girls and empowering girls and, kind of just showing girls that they can be strong and powerful and do what they want to do and not what the media says they need to do.
All right, that's deep. That's deep.
But that argument ignores the very real consequences when women attempt to reclaim their power in this way.
Okay, last week I took your advice from your song Get Some and I flaunted it till he wanted it. But I ended up losing my virginity to a guy that I don't know.
You see, it is time for girls to take back their power nowadays because it's your body and it's your mind and you should use that to feel sexy and empowered.
Okay, yeah, but now I'm pregnant.
Miracles. Next question.
So in today's video, we are going to examine the merit of women's sexual liberation through popular media. So like I said before, female sexuality was pretty much stifled for many years in the media. It seems like there were very strict boundaries on what was and not appropriate for women to experience. Anything outside the restrictive norms of marriage was seen as taboo. But over time, a shift happened and there were more depictions of women reclaiming their sexuality and owning their desires, being unafraid of the double standards that so many women have to deal with. For all of Euphoria's faults, one thing that it did really well was encapsulate the sexual liberation fallacy in Kat's character. So Kat's whole character arc throughout the show serves as a really good example and critique of why the sexual liberation movement doesn't really work in practice. In season 1, Kat starts off the show as a very awkward, insecure teenage girl. Her closest friends are really beautiful, attractive women who embrace their sexuality and who talk a lot about their sexual experiences and adventures. But Kat struggles with her own body image and her own self-identity. She was never able to achieve the same level of sexual freedom that her thinner, more conventionally attractive friends were able to.
Catch a dick and forget about your troubles.
Girl, you just need to catch a dick.
Seriously, Maddie, the best thing to do after a breakup is to fuck someone new and then move on.
Please, Kat, remind me again how many guys you fucked and oh yeah, catfishing, that don't count.
This represents a huge sore spot for Kat because it makes her feel even more ostracized than she already was. Discounting her already feeling othered and insecure because of her body image, her sexual inexperience adds another layer of feelings of inadequacy. When she confides in Jules that she's a virgin, she's met with a very abrasive response.
Kat wasn't a prude, but she was a virgin.
She told Jules that a week into summer school, and when Kat saw her reaction.
Bitch, this isn't the 80s. You need to catch a dick.
In this era of women reclaiming their sexuality, any perceived prudeness or aversion to sex can be interpreted as social ineptitude and gross inexperience. So Kat makes the decision to lose her virginity, not because she really wanted to or because she was really attracted to the person, but to prove a point. The point being that she is someone who can have sex and can be someone who is sexually liberated, because in this case, being sexually liberated is akin to being cool or socially popular. This is made very evident. When Kat confides in Maddie that she lost her virginity, she is met with overwhelming joy and approval. There was no interrogation into whether or not she enjoyed the experience, whether or not it's something that she felt satisfied by or comfortable with. The point is that she lost her virginity. She had sex. She did the thing you're supposed to do. And because she's a woman, that's supposed to be seen as empowering and a reclamation of her sexuality. Once Kat loses her virginity, she goes through this arc of playing up her sexuality. She dresses more provocatively, she becomes more promiscuous and sexually adventurous, and she also de-emphasizes the importance of emotional connection in favor for sexual gratification. And this all comes from a place of deep insecurity. Kat is insecure about who she is as a person and wants to portray herself as a more confident woman. And in her mind, the way to attain this level of confidence and self-love is not only to be desired by men, but to be absolutely in control of her sexual choices.
I could see his face scrunching up when he was coming all over my stomach, and I had this like realization, you know, like this epiphany that no matter how cool or sexy or smart you think a guy is, they're actually just fucking pathetic.
Which is why even when she has had no sexual experiences up to that point, her advice to Maddie about getting over her breakup with Nate is to become promiscuous, even though she herself wasn't at that point. But with Kat, that whole level of self-confidence wasn't real because it came from a place of deep insecurity at the expense of emotional intimacy. She prided herself on being able to emotionally detach from the man she was having casual sex with and was trying to, in a sense, fake it till she made it.
If afraid people are gonna find out that I was fat. But honestly, who gives a shit?
So in awe of you getting clean.
There's nothing more powerful than a fat girl who doesn't give a fuck.
You should see me in the crowd.
Kat's empowerment didn't come from an inner feeling of self-worth, but from the external validation she got from men. And then when she encountered someone who actually liked her on a deeper level besides the physical level, that made her uncomfortable, and she became very emotionally avoidant and distant.
Yeah, you're a fucking virgin, aren't you?
I mean,
Is that why you want to fuck me? Well, I don't fuck virgins.
really?
Yeah.
Why?
Because they just get too emotionally attached. Plus, they're too shy.
Ethan's earnest attraction and interest in her made her uncomfortable because of her experience feeling invalidated or having her emotional needs ignored in the past. And so a hyper-focus on sexuality is a way for Kat to protect her own feelings. But her experience navigating her sexual journey did not give her the confidence and self-assuredness she was expecting. Even after creating this new persona, she still felt deeply insecure, especially when she felt that an emotional connection that she built was threatened.
I guess I just wanted to hurt you as much as I imagined you'd hurt me. And I know that sounds juvenile, but it's true, and I wouldn't even be saying this to you because you're actually not like this. You're actually really kind, and you're actually really nice, and I'm so shitty, and I just wish I could go back.
So Kat was performing liberation rather than actually living it, because she still felt so trapped by her own insecurities. Having more sex with people didn't heal her trauma. In fact, it pushed her to sex work and in situations where, for the first time during her sexual journey, she didn't feel in power and in control. But what's really interesting when it comes to Euphoria is that at the same time that Kat is going on this journey of sexual liberation and supposed empowerment, Cassie is constantly being degraded and insulted for her sexual experiences. Since the beginning of the show, Cassie has built a reputation among her peers as being a whore because of her willingness to be sexually adventurous.
So Cassie's a whore.
Fact?
No, she's not. Fact, she's not even that type of girl.
Oh, have you seen her slut pages though?
No.
But the interesting thing here is that while Kat is having casual sex, sometimes with strangers, sometimes with people she's just met, Cassie has only ever had sex with people who she's been in love with. What we learned about Cassie is that she falls in love with every guy she's ever dated, mostly because of the trauma of her father abandoning her and her sister at a very young age. But Cassie isn't like out there having casual sex with everybody. But it doesn't matter. She still gains this reputation of being a whore, specifically because of how the men that she did date took advantage of her. And so in her relationship with McKay, once he finds out that that is her reputation and that she is perceived as a whore, he then decides to no longer respect any boundaries with Cassie. It wasn't until Nate told him about Cassie's reputation that he even decided to start having sex with her.
Well, my advice, you fuck her like the whore she is. You kick her ass to the curb.
And then when he does become intimate with her, he plays out intimacy with her in a way that is very aggressive, violent, and degrading, because he expects that that's what she would like. Not because she's ever expressed to him that those are the kinds of things that she expects or likes during intimacy, but solely because he now perceives her to be a whore. And once you're perceived as a whore, you are no longer worthy of respect or to be treated with human decency. So we see where in Euphoria, sexual liberation isn't really a thing, because at the same time as Kat is supposedly going on this journey to reclaim her sexuality, Cassie is being degraded and embarrassed and ostracized, even sometimes dehumanized for doing the exact same thing. Neither of them are enjoying their sexual experiences. And therein lies the fallacy of sexual liberation. Because while it might feel empowering to do things that make men uncomfortable and push up against male expectation, because male domination is so pervasive and so structurally baked into our patriarchal society, what may feel rebellious and transgressive to male desire can actually simply serve to reinforce those expectations. A similar situation happened in Greece. Greece also really highlights the sexual liberation fallacy. Sandra Dee is a virgin and is oftentimes mocked throughout the movie for being a virgin. At a time where still being a virgin can be seen as prudish. Sandra Dee, by the end of the movie, goes through this whole transformation where she remakes herself in the image of what she believes Danny Zuko will find the most attractive and most compelling. A sort of sexual liberation and empowerment. But at the same time, the movie is propping up Sandra Dee to go through this transformation and it being depicted as a positive thing. Rizzo is continuously slut-shamed throughout the movie.
Eat your heart out.
Well, sloppy seconds ain't my style.
Rizzo's sexual availability and willingness to have sex makes her a whore. So while one character is supposed to be experiencing this kind of liberation, another character is being punished for exhibiting the same sexual liberation. Rizzo isn't protected from that. Sandra Dee also did not undergo the transformation out of wanting to reinvent her image or for self-confidence, but because she wanted to keep Danny Zuko's attention. And she felt that that was the best way to go about it. While Rizzo is punished for her sexual liberation by being slut-shamed and by having an unwanted pregnancy. Netflix's Grand Army, I think, is another really good example of how sexual liberation and the fallacy of empowerment through sexuality could actually be harmful. So in that show, Joey is a very open-minded, outspoken, seemingly sexually empowered and liberated person. She openly opposes and brushes up against authority, especially when she perceives her own autonomy to be stifled. She has no issue pushing back against societal norms that try to inhibit her or her expression of her sexuality.
Everybody has nipples. What's inappropriate about mine? If you're gonna kick me out of a class I have every right to be in, I should at least get an explanation as to what your exact problem is.
It's offensive. This is a classroom and you're dressed like a hooker.
And in the show, we see where her embracing her sexuality rubs the men in her life particularly the wrong way. First, another character in the show has a crush on her, but he's frustrated that she is unwilling to bend and mold into the type of girl that he wants her to be.
Sorry, what, you want to get on top of me, huh? You want to give me like a lap dance or some shit, yeah? You need more fucking attention, Joe? Okay, no problem, let's go.
Don't fucking talk to me like that!
Because as much as she likes him, she makes it very clear that she's unwilling to change anything about who she is to appease his ego to be with him.
You guys gonna do what you want. Well, so can I.
I just don't need a fucking watch.
So in a moment of, again, that bold retaliation and pushing back against male expectation, she proves to him how much he doesn't own her by inviting sexual advances from her other male friends.
See?
I get to do that. I need to be able to do that.
And you can't make me feel fucking guilty. Okay?
Now, this ends up leading to her being assaulted, and in no way, shape, or form was that her fault. Consent can be withdrawn at any time. But I think the show really portrays in a very brutal way the fallacy of sexual liberation, because sexual liberation without societal protection leaves women vulnerable. So because Joey is experiencing this empowerment still through a very heavily male-dominated society, in a moment where she was expecting to be protected, to be respected, and to be cared for the people closest in her life, her perceived sexual invitation, because she's so sexually liberated, put her at risk and made her vulnerable for exploitation. And I think the show just really encapsulates the problem with the whole idea of sexual liberation through the male fantasy, and how that can sometimes put women in harm's way. Her liberation was mistaken for consent and promiscuity, and it really highlights how unprotected women are in these situations because her friends were her biggest allies and supporters. They had no issue supporting her other forms of activism and brushing up against structural powers, but the minute she depended on them for protection and care, they were nowhere to be seen. Instead, they isolated her and dismissed her concerns.
Joey, I know that we drank a lot.
What?
And we smoked a shit ton. Look, but so did you.
No.
And yeah, we all got down a little bit. You know, whatever, it is what it is. And that was embarrassing for you, I guess. And
What the fuck? No!
No amount of liberation or empowerment was enough to protect Joey from male privilege and male domination. Another really, really good example of the sexual liberation fallacy is Easy A. Olive in this movie is a really charismatic, smart, seemingly self-assured person, but she's a virgin, and for the most part, she's not taken seriously at school. However, when a rumor starts to spread that Olive was sexually active, her perceived sexuality, even though in actuality wasn't true, but just the perception of her sexuality made people respond to her differently.
We did it.
Yes! Finally! Now you're a super slut like me.
I don't think letting Peter Headland motorboat you behind a Bed Bath & Beyond really makes you a super slut.
For one, in some social circles, it made her more accepted as she's perceived to be more of an interesting person, but in other circles, it degrades her. It makes her seem morally loose.
Listen, I'm not the one that you have to answer to for your depraved behavior. There's a higher power that will judge you for your indecency.
Tom Cruise.
So an interesting twist in the movie, which plays into a lot of the themes in the Scarlet Letter, which is also discussed in the movie, is that even though Olive isn't really a sexually liberated person, just the perception of her being sexually liberated still comes with all of the consequences. Even when she's not having sex, she still has to deal with all of the consequences that come with people thinking she's having a lot of promiscuous sex. At first, Olive likes the newfound attention and she decides to commodify her reputation by allowing socially inept boys at her school to claim that they have had sex with her even though they haven't, in order to increase their own social standing.
The Lord gave me $100 from Best Buy so he could tell people we hooked up behind the library. I got $50 from TJ Maxx so that Eric Lynn could say we got it on during chemistry.
She enters into this transactional relationship, seemingly because she isn't too concerned about her own reputation. So the boys who have sex with her are praised and are seen as cool, but she herself is constantly degraded for her perceived promiscuity. After a time, the rumors start to take on a life of their own, and even Olive no longer has control over her own narrative. If sex is one of the ways in which men can enact male domination over women, then sex in and of itself becomes a form of power. And one conversation that has come up out of this whole sexual liberation movement is women taking the power for themselves. Essentially, women having sex like men.
Do you think it's really possible to pull off this whole women having sex like men think.
So something that this really touches on is the idea of women having sex like men is women prioritizing their own sexual gratification in a scenario where they would have been expected to prioritize the sexual gratification of their partner above their own. So it's about women making sure that they enjoy the experience as much as men, and sometimes even at the expense of men.
I just said that because I was ovulating and you said you wouldn't have sex with me if we were fighting.
You tricked me to get me into bed?
That's right. I got mine.
I feel so used.
But another component of that is also the emotional detachment, the lack of emotional intimacy, multiple partners, and using men as sexual objects. That is how women have sex like men. But something that I do think is interesting is that while it is perceived that men do forego emotional intimacy in favor of sexual gratification, as men get older, especially when they reach their late 30s and 40s and 50s, that is when they begin to prioritize emotional intimacy and emotional connection. So many times in the media, we see these players and womanizers reach a certain age where they decide to hang up their hats, find a woman, and settle down.
You know, I mean, yeah, I could get a girlfriend. Yeah, we could sit in a chair and do crossword puzzles. But, you know, are we ever going to have the, the closeness like you guys have?
How they eventually come to yearn for the emotional intimacy that they've denied women of for years. In the pilot episode of Sex and the City, this very topic is broached. The idea of women having sex like men. No emotional intimacy, no commitment, just casual sex. In the episode, Carrie engages in a sexual intimate encounter with a man who was previously very emotionally withholding towards her.
After all these years, I finally saw him for what he was, a self-centered, withholding creep who was still the best sex I ever had in my life. However, I did have a little experiment in mind.
In the encounter, she prioritized her own sexual gratification above his own. In the aftermath, she explains how she felt empowered by the experience.
I just had sex like a man. I left feeling powerful, potent, and incredibly alive. I felt like I owned the city. Nothing and no one could get in my way.
And of course, in a social dynamic where women are expected to overperform and cater to the sexual desires of men, completely ignoring a man's need can feel empowering. But is that real power?
I didn't understand. Did all men secretly want their women promiscuous and emotionally detached? And if I was really having sex like a man, why didn't I feel more in control?
And therein lies the problem with this whole idea, because instead of in these depictions, women prioritizing themselves, making up the sexual deficit, figuring out how to better advocate for themselves during sex or how to greater prioritize their own comfort and pleasure during sex, it is simply about taking the power away from men.
So, did you come?
No.
Men are still at the focal point. It's about this feeling of, if I'm being dominated by men in this specific sphere in my life, how can I flip that on its head and dominate men instead? Which is like, no, it shouldn't be about one person dominating the other. It should be about both of you working together to create a wonderful experience. But instead, it's all of these conversations about who has the power. And if I don't have the power, how can I get the power? And if I'm not the one dominating men, am I the one being dominated? Another example of this happens in It's Always Sunny. In this episode, Dee Reynolds, after having been rejected by a guy that she was dating and thought that she had a very intimate relationship with.
Weird.
I'm breaking up with you.
Right. Well, I didn't know that we were together. Look, can I get a beer?
Decides to push back on the system by entering into intimate relationships with multiple men and giving them poor ratings on their performance. For Dee, this represents empowerment out of a perceived slight from men not rewarding her with emotional intimacy.
The D system. Do them, establish low rating, increase power.
Increase is spelled with an I.
Okay, well then, infuriate them when they find
Another
out.
I.
Empower. It doesn't matter. The word doesn't matter. It's the system, and I don't care about you.
You know what?
So she decides to also forego emotional intimacy while degrading the men on their sexual performance. However, this does not go the way Dee intended. While she is able to successfully engage in multiple emotionally empty physical relationships, the men do not care about her withholding emotional intimacy. For them, they've prioritized the sexual and physical nature of the relationship. And so long as those needs are met, they have no issue being used or degraded so long as they are continuously receiving sexual gratification.
Hey, D.
You again? Listen, I'm not going to change your rating, okay? Just be grateful for the time that we had together and beat it.
Well, actually, I was hoping to hang out again.
Yeah, I bet you do. It's because I gave you 1 star. I played you.
I don't need stars. I was just hoping to get laid again.
Huh?
Hey, D. Any chance I could get D'd again?
No, you're upset. Aren't you upset? You're upset about the 0 rating I gave you.
No. You could rate me lower if you like.
Hey, are you the whore who bangs everybody?
No, I'm not the whore. I'm the empowered woman who gives poor ratings to men.
Yeah, sure. Can I get a rating?
No, why would you want that from me? What's going on? Get out of here.
Dee realizes that her empowerment from using men as sexual objects did not give her the desired results. Instead, it made her be perceived as a whore and as someone who doesn't require any emotional labor to receive sexual favors. So instead of empowerment, she develops a reputation as a slut.
Or a powerful woman, instead of a dirty, dirty whore who bangs toad people.
In this conversation, I definitely don't want to discount the feeling of freedom, of being able to be in full control of your sexual choices. In no way do I want to demonize women who want to make a choice to own their sexuality in an unabashed way. But sexual reclamation is not revolutionary. It's not liberatory, especially when we live in a world where women are still being slut-shamed. Especially when we are living in a very male-dominated patriarchal society. For every woman that can feel empowered for taking agency over their sexuality, there are several women being degraded for doing the same. So I think in these depictions, women should be allowed to have fun, to be promiscuous, but promiscuity is not a source of power in a world where sex work is still demonized.
Fuck! You hoard yourself.
What you are now going to explain to me is bad. Can I never win with you?
It is the worst thing women can do.
So that's it. Those are my thoughts. Be sure to let me know what you think down below. Like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next one.